Theatre, film, TV and more. Suzy Rong reviews it all on Joy Drive.
Good afternoon, Suzy Rong.
Hi Warren, we're fast approaching the most wonderful time of the year, aren't we? I put my tree up with 28 labubus hanging off of it.
I saw a photo that you sent me today and I thought, oh, that's a pretty tree. I didn't realise Suzy Rong had a lovely Christmas tree. And then you came back and said, basically, look closer. I looked, I zoomed in, it's covered in boo-boo. Are they all your friends? Are they the ones you talk to?
I was talking to them as I was hanging them up. They were very happy. They were very happy to be seeing the light of day and not be, kept away in my closet for a month.
Hey, I was chatting to someone earlier about using a rubber ducky. Apparently it's a big thing in the IT world. You have a rubber ducky and you talk to it to solve your problems. I love the idea of talking, and it talks you through it and you resolve the problem yourself as you're speaking aloud to something with a simple, friendly face. And I mentioned you, and he said a Labubu could do the
I heard. It sounded like it was slightly meditative, the effects, you know. It's like sometimes when you're thinking too hard about something, you can't get to it. But if you're able to relax your mind a little bit, things that you do know can sort of come into consciousness easier.
I agree. It's a bit like, when I find creatively speaking, I find if I'm, for example, out in nature, if I'm walking through a forest or if I'm walking along the beach, I'm by myself, I'm thinking, I find that's when the creativity happens. And maybe that's it. Maybe we need to silence our brains more in order to spark these solutions to our problems. Whereas we're too busy, we get caught up in stuff. There's no room for that part of the brain to sort of go, okay, I'm going to solve this for you. What do you reckon, Suzy?
Yeah. I think relaxation is a big part of creativity. You really need to be able to find a balance of kind of like an energy that spurs you on, but also let your mind have a certain freedom to it for the best things to happen. And that's what I believe anyway.
I agree with you. Now, Suzy, this week the Melbourne Queer Film Festival is on. It is such an exciting festival. I love it. We watched a movie that I think you can catch this Friday if you check out the Melbourne Queer Film Festival website. It's called A Good Child. Give us your review.
Jia Hao is a successful drag queen in Singapore, and like many queer people who are out in Singapore, they are estranged from their family. When Jia Hao's father dies and their mother begins her descent into dementia, Jia Hao decides to move back home to take care of her. One night, she sees Jia Hao in drag for the first time and believes them to be her daughter. Jia Hao then takes the opportunity to transition and begins living as a woman in the family home. The Singapore movie A Good Child is having its second screening this Friday at the Melbourne Queer Film Festival. Based on the story of real-life drag performer and trans person Sammy Chen, A Good Child is an opportunity to see what it is like for many Asian queer people in locations and in households where not only is there little acceptance, there are scarce few structural and legal protections against discrimination and persecution. In the movie, we see a level of harmony between Jia Hao and the mother, but the constant derision they receive from others is a reminder of the progress yet to be attained in many places outside of Western cities. A Good Child is a well-polished film and thoughtfully put together, mainly with the intention of pleading to non-queer audiences for understanding and acceptance. As a result, those of us in the rainbow community might feel that a lot of the trauma porn that is central to the film can be overbearing. On a personal level, its folksy and melodramatic tone is more than a little alienating, but for other Aussies, it could feel somewhat amusing or even delightfully exotic, to use the culturally loaded term. The lead actor, Richie Koh, does a commendable job and has been nominated for a highly prestigious Golden Horse Award this year for Best Male Actor. It'll come as no surprise to regular listeners that I'm going to have a problem with a cis man playing a trans character. Much as his commitment is unassailable, there is an undeniable artifice to his interpretation of the role, often slipping into caricature. Nonetheless, this is a rare and valuable insight into trans lives in Asia, and it's certainly worth checking out. Warren, there are some very big emotions in this one, aren't there?
Oh, Suzy, I tell you what, I was scared to watch it, to be honest with you, because, it's about losing your mother to dementia. And, of course, I've spoken about it before. I lost my mum to dementia this year, but managed to get through it. And it does bring up a lot of things. It brings up a lot of stuff. And one of the things that it did bring up is when life turns into a role that you didn't expect. And this film shows how suddenly you can find yourself as the carer, maybe the responsible one, that you don't think about. And all of a sudden it happens really, really quickly. I found myself in that position. After my mum passed away, I'm now my dad's best friend. And I suppose not carer because he's quite healthy now and still with it. But certainly the roles have all changed really, really rapidly. And I wondered when I watched it, Suzy, I thought of you and I thought, how did you feel about seeing a movie about Singapore and about caring for relatives? Because, of course, you've lost your mum as well.
Yeah, I lost my mum when I was very, very young. I was like 21, 22. The film is I think it's got a lot of charm to it. I do feel like it is a part of Singapore that I kind of run away from. It's the part of it that can be quite a little bit unpleasant. The way she walks around and she cops a lot of heat. Like she constantly gets insulted by people, and I think that is probably still quite true. I think when I go there, I hang out in really bougie places, so it doesn't really happen to me so much. But the film kind of reminds me
in your luxury hotel.
I go to really nice places. It's just a week. It's just about 10 days. And I go to all the really fancy places that, kind of live a fairy tale life for a week and a half, before coming back here to reality. But when I'm there, I don't know if it's conscious or not. I tend not to go to places where it's a bit less bougie. But actually I do, every trip I tend to go once or twice to kind of outside of the CBD, and I do feel like it's not as bad as I remember it to be, but the film kind of reminds me how bad it can be.
Sometimes, though, I find, Suzy, movies like this can give you almost a permission to look back at your own story with softer eyes. Did it do that? Did it help you look at, I suppose, your own journey differently? Even though you say you keep away from those areas?
I didn't transition in Singapore. I began my transition in Australia. But the first few visits to Singapore as my authentic self were, I approached with trepidation, obviously, because I know that Singapore can be unkind to trans people. But I felt like it was fairly safe for me. I think a large part of it was because I had entered as an older woman, and I think in Singapore there is a lot of kind of reverence and respect for people who are older. I think it's very much an Asian culture thing.
I love that about Asian cultures.
Yeah, and I feel like I benefited from experiencing Singapore as an older woman. Clearly I didn't transition in my teens and my 20s because it was never going to be easy. So I never experienced that. Yeah.
One thing I think the movie does beautifully, it shows how love and worry and grief can all sit in the same room, side by side, and I certainly know that's something that I experienced with my mother. And in some ways, you start saying goodbye to the person that as the dementia starts, and it's very, very slow. And in some ways, my mother was lucky because she missed the worst part of it. She still knew who she was. She knew who I was. She got muddled with times, days, everything else. But she knew who we were, and that was fundamentally really special. But there was almost like an innocence that came back. So almost like she reverted almost childlike in some ways as the dementia progressed. And I saw that happen in this movie as well. And in particular, when the transition happened in the movie, the mother was almost not hostile, but scared of the father's reaction to their son wearing women's clothes. But this childlike mum embraced her as a daughter, and it just showed how there's so much built up anger, frustration, hatred, all this construct about people who are not conforming to the norm. But when the innocence returns, it just melts away in an instant, and it just shows how not real this stuff is. Does that make sense? It's all made up in our heads.
Yeah, you're talking about the social stuff, the social conditioning, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's great that this movie is based on a real story. You know, at the end, it tells you that it's based on a true story, which is great, because if that's how the mother did relate to their child, and that's a really great story that their mother was able to see the real person beyond all the kinds of conditioning that she had received, and how they were taught to be cruel to their own kids simply because they were queer, and because she was falling into dementia, all those things left her, and she was able to kind of love her child the way that, a mother naturally would. It was nice to see.
It's almost as though the forgetfulness that came with the dementia, she forgot about all those other social conditionings that make it difficult for kids, and they just disappeared. And when they disappeared, how lovely. You saw that real love between a mother and her daughter. That really stood out for me in this film.
Yeah, it's great. And through that, which is a very central relationship for any person, the way that you think your parent looks at you. And through that, the character, Jia Hao, just got so much sort of like affirmation. You can see that Jia Hao begins to kind of embrace their wholeness a bit more, and kind of find an understanding of themselves a bit more. And I think that's a really valuable message in the film.
And of course, the other message in the film is who takes care of the carer when, caregiving can be isolating and it can be draining, and because there is no relief, you're the person that this person is responsible on. And as we can see in the movie, A Good Child, that it can be quite challenging when the person with dementia turns around and accuses you of things that you haven't done, or calls you things that you're not. It can be quite confronting, and to see that and to see the impact that it has on a carer and not necessarily having any relief is quite interesting, particularly in Asian culture as well. I don't know how carers are viewed over there, Suzy.
I always thought that, if that's how an old person's, like if you're really old and your remaining years, you become, a dementia patient. I don't know how to describe it. I always thought the burden was always going to be on the people around them. Like, they seem to be quite, blissfully oblivious to everything. But the person around them has to deal with, kind of the stresses of it. So I would like to ask you, is it mostly a mental thing that you go through when you have to care for them? Are you trying to, is it the stress and does the stress come from knowing that you're losing the person mainly, or is it the daily stuff that you are dealing with?
I just think it's more, for me, the knowing that you're losing is it's sort of, you accept that. I accepted that over time. I don't think my father quite accepted it. He was always trying to, he always had hope, and he did so well as a carer. Honestly, I'm really proud. He did such a good job. Honestly, he stopped my mum going into aged care because he thought he could do a better job. And he didn't necessarily accept that she was going to pass away. I did. I could see what was happening. I was talking to the doctors. I knew the reality of it. But he didn't accept. He thought, I can just cook her better meals, I can do this and that, and was desperate to hang on. It was really sad in the end, but it took a toll on him. It took his physical health started to fail. And then when my mother passed away, he ended up in emergency the following week because he collapsed in a bit of a heap. Just from the exhaustion of caring for her. It was really hard to see. Fortunately, he's starting to pick up now. And he's just, the sadness is starting to clear, and he's got a really good attitude. He's like, we're going out for dinner once a week. We're doing this. His attitude to life is amazing, and he's come through it all. But there was a physical toll, Suzy, that it certainly took on him. And also, I've got to say as well, the aged care processes over here are disgusting. I mean, in terms of getting help, you've got to go on waiting lists, and they don't realise that. And then people call you back, and if you miss the call, let's say you're sitting on the toilet, you miss the phone call from whoever the aged care provider is, the service you're going to get, they give you 2 or 3 strikes and you're out, and then you go back to the beginning of the queue again. It's absolutely stressful and ridiculous, and it's unfair to people who are caring for older relatives. It's a worry, and it scares me for when I get older as well.
That's really good information to have, because I'm here imagining that all those systems are very well established, and that, we have no.
There's a huge waiting list. My mother was waiting, at least, I would say 12 months before she got some relief. And in the meantime, that's a toll taken on my father's life, and it's, you're trying to keep them out of the nursing homes and the aged care. You're trying to help the health system by caring for them at home where they want to be. But you pay a price. There's waiting lists. It is frustrating to deal with. It is so frustrating. People come over, nurses come over and say, "Sorry, that's not my job. I can't do that." Mum couldn't get out of bed, for example, one day, and I'm lifting her out of bed's not, or lifting her up against the pillow is not my role. Like, it's just a nightmare, the whole thing. I could speak for hours about it, but I won't on this at the moment. But certainly, we do need to see changes in terms of aged care, and I feel for anyone out there who is going through the system at the moment, waiting on getting an approval number to have some sort of service provided to them. It's just terrible. Absolutely terrible. So, Suzy, that's what we've got to look forward to.
How very unexpected. How very unexpected that this movie was probably more relevant to you than to me.
Yeah, I know, and totally unexpected. I was thinking Singapore, this is perfect. This is Suzy's life. But, it was fascinating. It's called A Good Child. You can catch it at the Melbourne Queer Film Festival. Check out the website, Suzy Wrong. What are we watching next week?
Yeah, the Melbourne Queer Film Festival website is mqff.com.au, I believe. Or is it
Yes.
Or let's
.com.
Let's do a check. Yeah, mqff.com.au. So definitely check that out. The Netflix series Boots received some unsolicited attacks from the Pentagon last month, saying that it's woke garbage. So we're going to take a look at that and see if we can figure out what that even means. I'll see you next Tuesday for Boots on Netflix. Bye bye.